Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Saturday Night Sci-Fi Shadow Chat. Tonight, we will be finishing the discussion we were having last week on Psionic in your tabletop role-playing games. Last week, we talked about some of the pitfalls and some of the aspect. I realize Psionics are not real popular with a lot of folks in role-playing games, especially fantasy games. But in sci-fi games especially, there is ample room for psionics. And tonight I thought we would talk about how we can incorporate them and get them into our games, regardless of the genre, so that people will not look so down upon them as if they were, right from the devil, or however you want to look at it. Me personally, I like to add everything, in a game, and always leave room for different things, because you never know where the game is going to take you. And so tonight I want to welcome our good friend Omen Owl and our good friend Grim. How you guys doing? We're going to have some more guests coming in. I sent the links out, and Laura asked, there she is. She asked to be in the show. And Justin, cool. I suppose I could make an exception for you too if you'd like to talk about psionics tonight. I'm going to put the link up there in just a minute. I want to give Bo, he's supposed to join us. Hungar might be there, and I know I'm forgetting somebody, and if I forgot, Rick. I invited Rick from 28, but he's probably doing, family stuff, but you never know, he might show up. So, you know what the heck, I'm just going to put the link in here for you too. Whoops. That's not how you do it.
So I missed last week for that, and I don't remember why.
I think you were doing family stuff as well. Jordan's here from the Gamers Den. How you doing? Here is the link. And in case you didn't hear Jordan, or grab it from the obvious title, we're going to be talking about sci-fi games, psionic and sci-fi games, or even in your fantasy games. I know, Jordan, you do mostly fantasy games from what I've gathered from your channel. And if you guys have not checked out the Gamers Den, please go out there and give him a sub. He's got one of the best channels out there. And I see Justin's smiling face here to give me a hard time about my dinner. And no, it was not Taco Bell. It was Chili's. I don't know if you're familiar with that restaurant, but we ate like kings tonight. And the funniest thing, my son had a steak. I had a big pile of different food, sausage, and brisket, and chicken, and all this other stuff. We got this side of this order of appetizers, and it included sliders, and the sliders were the best. Absolutely. When we were done, I asked my son, what was the best part? And he's like, the sliders. And I'm like, yep, we should have just ordered sliders. But Laura, first time to the show. Welcome. How you doing? Nice to meet you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Let's get a voice check. Omen?
I'm still here.
Grim?
I can hear you good.
Okay, Laura.
How's everybody?
Mason, can you hand me the TV controller over there?
Yeah, let's try to get the background noises to a minimum if we can. I know real life is gonna pop in and rear its ugly head from time to time. And Justin, how you doing?
Good, sir. Good, sir. But in the future, the only restaurant that exists is Taco Bell.
I understand. In the future, I did catch that.
That's a dystopian hell. That's your dystopian hell of Taco Bell. Worse than Idiocracy.
Well, we are living in something of a dystopian nightmare for some folks out there. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty blessed. My son and I have it pretty good here in our neck of the woods in sunny California.
And not that he's saying he's here, but let's hope all's well with Squirrel Hermit, because he was within what, half a mile or so of the of that train
distance, man. Yeah. I haven't heard from him in a while. I'm kind of worried. I'm
He
hoping
was
he's okay.
yesterday, I think. He's been around. So
Okay, James, how you doing? I hope you are recovering nicely from that wonderful, wonderful vacation. Later on, you're gonna have to tell us all about it, and send us, as many of those lovely photos that you were sharing with us. Being that I'm retired, I don't actually get to have vacations. I don't know how that happened, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
I almost feel retired. I only have 3 scheduled meetings a week.
I wouldn't complain one bit. I don't know what you do, Justin, but
Yeah, I tend to keep it pretty cryptic for
that's perfectly
confidentiality
fine.
reasons.
I totally get that. I get that. I was in a field that I have, I still to this day can't talk about, and as long as you're, healthy, your family's good. How about you, Laura? You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, because this is your first time joining us?
Sure. I got a lot of echo going off from the different stuff. What do you guys want to know? I mean, I played D&D since the 70s when I was a kid, off and on. Depends on the era and what's going on in my life. I've done Star Frontiers, Gamma World, probably other games in there. I've written articles for Star Frontiers magazines, fan magazines, under my legal name, Laura Muma, also under Chichkalinza. I've helped several people with their articles. Trying to bounce around. I've got a couple pin names, if you will, for the internet, where I help people from time to time.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm a commercial driver.
Oh, wow.
Currently. I drive buses, school buses, with medical sensitive children. Currently, that's my current job. I'm a grandmother. I'm raising my niece and my nephew because one side of the family died. My husband's also a DM. And we're currently having a play group. We've been teaching various games. Right now we're starting D&D. We started it last week.
Hey, Laura, is it possible to bring your microphone just a little closer to you?
Oh, sure. I'm on an iPad.
Well, yeah, I know. I am on an iPad too. I was just asking because it seems like you break up a little bit here and there. That's all.
Is that better?
Much better.
Much better.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Awesome.
And Ardoon. I got Ardoon as a gift, and my husband and I.
Well, I got to appreciate. If you're gonna do that, I got to shout out to Shadow for giving me this.
Oh, that's awesome. I got to get one of those.
Yeah, you guys know Ardoin's like my home away from home. I love it because it's the right amount of gonzo with the right amount of real life inspiration. David A was just one hell of a guy.
He was.
Yeah, and the way that happened was a friend of ours didn't play role-playing games, and somebody had left him at his house.
Oh, wow.
So many years later, we're like, well, we play role-playing games, and he gave them to us. So I have like first editions of those two. And then they kind of sat here in the house, and we looked at them, and we played D&D, and, we maybe borrowed a thing or two from them. But we never really looked at them. And then I got a deadly disease, and I was stuck here in quarantine, not COVID. And
sorry to hear that.
And I was on the internet, and somebody posted a picture of Ardu, and I said, I've got that. And I went and pulled it out.
Was that me or was that Tenkar? Or
No, it
there's
was
another
like
guy?
on a forum.
Oh.
On one of the old D&D forums.
Gotcha. Well, you guys watch in probably
And so,
2024.
That's when I realized I had like gold. I actually started looking at it seriously. You know.
Yeah, they are. They're worth a pretty penny, and Emperor's Choice is acquired it, and they've been working on it for the last couple of years, actually more than that. And I'm helping them work on the next iteration of it, and hopefully, maybe by the end of this year or the beginning of next, Arduin Bloody Arduin will be a thing on all the gaming shelves, driving all of the crazies out there absolutely nuts with some of
I'm
their
actually
takes.
jazzed about it. I'm totally jazzed about it.
Well, you will not be disappointed if you if you're a hardcore gamer from back in the day or even a new gamer. There's going to be plenty of it in there for everybody, unless you're easily offended, in which case sucks to be you, I guess.
I went in.
Everything.
I've been diligently. We had our house crushed a couple times. Natural disasters are fun. And one of the times it took out our role-playing game library.
Oh
The
no!
Arduin books, because they were
That's
different.
awful.
They were in a different part of the house, so they didn't get touched at all.
Oh,
That's why
good.
they survived.
Yeah, I had a garage fire where I lost about 50 tank model kits from Warhammer and 40K and various other products.
It's just
Uh,
sad, man, when you lose that stuff.
Well, I was
Right.
lucky, like you said, my game books were in the house and the garage fire was outside, and I got lucky, and I still have almost all of my collection, almost every game book I've ever bought, I still have, except for I think 3 or 4 game books that I've sold over the years, and of course regretted it, but I've since acquired all of them except one.
We've been diligently, slowly replacing like everything that we can.
So James says he loves RPG Grandma, so that's your new nickname.
RPG Grandma.
And Multi-Gun says hi to everybody.
Hello.
That's my new nickname.
So you got a new nickname with us, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Laura and I have talked quite a bit in the various video, comments that she's left over the last year or so, and it's nice to be able to put a face to a name. So let's say we get this show started and actually hit the topic at hand, which is psionics and role-playing games, especially sci-fi games, because I think we kind of beat the subject to death when it came to fantasy games, even though that wasn't the intention last week. I'm still hoping that Bo's going to make it, and if not, then we have one more spot, but I'm going to go around the clockwise fashion that we always do. I'll start with Omen. I mean, you guys are all going to have to wait more than your fair share of a turn. But what is a way?
Are you okay? Are we good?
How would you introduce psionics to your gaming group if they've never seen them or experienced them before?
So I have a couple of ideas on this. One is I don't want to put this because usually NPCs would have it, and especially if we're going to talk about like alien races, talking about more of a how do I want to put this? Is a like if you have telepathy between a hive colony, then the other part is for actual players, I would make it very, very low. So things like danger sense, premonitions, what's the general feelings. So not this whole, how do I want to put this? It would be more as a communication aspect.
Laura, you're killing us here.
Yeah, it more of it on a communication aspect than anything else. So more of that's the way that I would incorporate it in there. I don't like telekinesis. I don't like pyromania or something like that, unless it's going to be a Warhammer 40,000 or something that's going to give extra dimensional creatures or things like that. 40K, Mutant Chronicles, a few of these others in there.
Yeah, I think that was the general consensus last week, is that Psionics are overpowered most of the time.
I'm not even saying overpowered, because honestly, a gun is more powerful than most of the other stuff. What I want them is to be special and subtle. That's what I want them to be. It's not that I want to say overpowered, because a flamethrower is going to generally, in sci-fi, most of your weapons are going to beat out a psionic aspect. Well, but I do like the whole idea of that, or the other phrase is even something like Dune. If you notice, almost all their psionics are very they're much more subtle.
Discreet. Yeah.
Laura, can you
just mute yourself until you're ready to talk? That's all we're saying. There we go.
Yeah, we're hearing all kinds of weird noises. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. Last week we were mostly talking fantasy, and I don't know, the consensus was they're almost as powerful as wizards most of the time. And no, Psionics should never be that powerful.
It's not that it bothers me that if they're that powerful. The problem I have is, in most cases, you're just replacing psionics with spells.
Yeah. What's the point?
Well, you just call them a different thing. Like
it's a skin. It's just a skin. Yeah. In any game, look, we're talking about. I don't want to talk about game mechanics specifically, because that's not really what the show's about. But really, what's the difference between a fireball that comes out of your mind and a fireball that comes out of your relationship with the god, and a fireball that comes out of your ability to collect mana?
Yeah,
they're just skins in the game.
So the other part I want to bring up with psionics, because we're doing this, is I also want to view it as an aspect of training. So, anyone that's done like the Wim Hof method or things like that, and people are like, I can't go in the cold. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. It's a mind over matter thing. So it's to me, again, when we're talking about subtleties here, it's also what I also consider psionics, though people may argue about it. It's also mental control of yourself, slowing your breathing, going into a near death state, being able to survive extreme. When I say extreme temperatures, we're talking about like 140 degrees to probably about -10, Fahrenheit, somewhere in those kinds of aspects of it. It's there. The other one is, not that a lot of people do it, but anyone that's followed like the Alien universe, a lot of it are snippets where you have a connection to something or someone, so you can kind of feel where things are without it being there. So that's what I mean by very subtle. Is it's the you may have dreams that come about. It's one of those things that allows, well, premonitions, or we say premonitions, but sometimes allowing things to understand what's going on with the rest of the world. But it allows the DM or the game master to really go through and decide to add some flavor, add some information that's outside of the normal player's boundaries. So they, I don't know about you all, and this is the problem that I have, is I want to know all the mysteries. And by knowing all the mysteries, I'm kind of ruining myself for finding them out during play. But that's kind of the but it allows you as the DM to add flavor and things like this into a story that they normally wouldn't get. That's completely outside of their realm. So that's how I would do it. It's very subtle unless you're looking at aliens, and then I would probably allow telepathy among them, and even then that's kind of limited. But that's not really any different than having a communicator. Nothing, I guess, for psionics that I look at in a sci-fi setting is any more powerful than the technology around it. It is, in fact, it's much weaker, but it allows you to have something that when you don't have that equipment to do that for.
How about you, Justin?
It sounds good to me. You?
Well, I'll get to that. You know what? I skipped Grim because there's no image for you, Grim. How about Grim? We'll go back to Grim, and then we'll go over to Laura, and then Bo. And Bo, welcome to the show. Glad you could make it. Great
Hey,
game
Bo.
last night.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So,
Great
Grim,
fun.
how about you?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's a little soft, a little light, but we'll make do.
Hey, yeah, I agree with Omen. Sometimes it's good to have a light touch of it. What I do is I've had several games where I had characters either have a lighter touch, like say in your Starship Troopers, or a little bit like the Psy Corps in Babylon 5, where they don't have a whole lot of power. A little bit, not like the one guy they had or anything, but
Bester.
yep, that's no, like that guy they had that was
Yeah,
really
I
tight.
forget his name. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't. But what I did, I think in the game, if say I had a player that was a magic user, so what I did for her, and this was in a 2300 game, she wanted to play a magic user, so I said no, and she still wanted to play a magic user, so I thought, okay, well, we can do that for her. She really wants to. I didn't want any magic in the game, but so what I did was I let her slowly realize she had uh, hidden psionic abilities, and they slowly started to come out. And basically, a guy like Vesper came to her, Vesper, and he said, we want you to work for us. It was an unknown branch of the government of the Soleimani Empire, well, the beginning of the Soleimani Empire, and so he said, we're wanting you to be able to use your powers, and he gave her a small gun, and the gun was actually a gun tuned into psionics. And it was pretty cool. She could literally, after a while, she could get this gun. She could use it as a pistol. It had a back part that was the storage for power, and basically psionic power. She could literally manipulate it in the air, and she got pretty good with that, the character. And she had that skill, which was basically use this thing around corners. It had a scope where she could see what was around corners without exposing herself to danger. And she got some other fun abilities that were, I think they were pretty cool. She had basically psionic contact with certain animals. She had to roll, and she would have the ability to talk to. Well, she had a dog. She got a dog that was genetically uh, manipulated, but he wasn't specifically a psionic dog. But she was able to get him, and she used him quite effectively for the group quite a few times. And she got a bird, so she really liked that. The bird was a falcon that had been genetically mutated to a little larger size, a little scary kind of bird. He had a camera. She really couldn't see through his eyes or anything weird like that, but she could see through this camera that nobody else. It was a kind of a sound. It was a little screen that she could see through this screen. Nobody else could see the image, but she could. The camera was there, and she could see something on that screen where nobody else could, and that allowed her to have the ability to manipulate this bird and do scouting for the party. And she enjoyed that quite a bit. And she had one more ability, which was to basically trash electronics if she rolled correctly. But it could also feed back into her head and cause her a psionic meltdown for a while. So that's just one of the examples of one of the times I used psionics that I thought was pretty fun. The 2300 guys all thought it was fun. She became pretty hated actually by their enemies, which was a group that was trying to hunt them down and kill her. And partially due to the psionics, they weren't able to capture her, so they decided to go ahead and kill her against the group. So that was my thing. And by the way, I want to say that Taco Bell did survive the fast food wars, and
only restaurant to survive. Only one.
And how prophetic that movie became.
In the future, man, you're gonna be having pianos and tacos.
The future of like 8 years ago.
Wait. Taco Bell, KFC, and what's the other one? Is it A&W or something? Because they're all owned by the same company.
PepsiCo.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna let Laura back in. Hopefully, she's got her tech all up to. Welcome back, Laura. And since you got bumped, I'm gonna let Bo go so we can just keep going in the circle. Give you a little time to come up with your answer. Bo, how would you introduce psionics into a game that, for the most part, I guess didn't have them, or you want to bring them more to the forefront of the story?
How will I introduce psionics into my game? Well, I planted seeds and teasers.
Oh, hey, Squirrel. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I said hey to Nathan, but Squirrel, like Owen said, we were just all worried about you. If you like, I will throw you the link because you're special. But that's up to you, my friend. So go ahead, Bo. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
I planted seeds and teasers throughout my background material regarding psionics for the players to read if they're observant. I think that the problem that we have in introducing psionics into a game, or magic for that matter, that does not have it previously, is that we want to avoid it becoming a 13th Warrior scenario, right? You remember the book, The 13th Warrior? You got, a bunch of guys that are Vikings, and then you got one guy who's an Arab. Just a complete fish out of water. What I want is, regardless of balance or mechanics, I don't want one of my players to become the center of the party, right? I want it to be a party. So what I would do is I would either have the psionics be prevalent in NPCs and have them just incredibly powerful, like 40k navigators that can just open their third eye and just melt you to dust, or have it more subtle at first, kind of like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, where he can pick up a tennis ball with his brain, but not do anything particularly significant, and then build up from there and just see. I'm a big believer in organic campaigns. I want to sandbox. I want to see where it goes. So when I do introduce psionics, it will probably be very subtle in terms of players. Have them spend any extra points that they got over the course of the game and say, hey, look, you want to spend 10 points on a telekinesis or something. Now, Owen made an interesting point regarding the very powerful ones like precognition, things that have the potential to break the game, whether it's on the part of the GM or on the part of the player. What happens? We get all of these without getting into too much of a quantum argument, right? How do you time travel? How do you predict the future if you haven't seen it, and is it even really possible mechanically? I think there's room for the GM to decide those things for himself over the course of their game, and I believe in a very organic approach. Fortunately, I've got probably 3 different rule sets for incorporating magic or psionics, if I just want to dig into them, into the campaign that I'm running right now. So I think the best advice is like anything else, right? Start low, go slow, and if it starts to break the game, rein it in.
I'm going to say one thing with what Bo
Yeah.
said. You also have to have player buy-in, because I'll be honest, is when we talk about like Star Frontiers, I love Star Frontiers, and then when they brought in the Zebulon's Guide and they started bringing in Psionics, it didn't feel like Star Frontiers anymore. And that's some of the things of part of the reason I like very subtle aspects, because I want my science to be science rather than start being a science fantasy.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Hey, Echo, welcome to the show. Laura, you're up to bat. What say
Hi
ye?
guys. You everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, much
All
better.
right, excellent. Okay, yeah, this is much better. Well, psionics in sci-fi or fantasy, you really have to decide what your setting's going to be, what you're going for. And if psionics doesn't work for it, then don't do it. Don't even bother with it. But if it does, or some reason, then go for it. But yeah, you do have to start out, kind of test the waters with it. Sometimes you can do that with NPCs or a monster first. I think if you have pre-existing characters that don't have psionic abilities and you want to add it in, then you need to have something happen in the storyline that causes the psionic ability to come forward in the character, because that makes the most sense. Like it was latent, they didn't know about it, and it's activated. But you don't want to overpower the game. So you do have to be careful with it. On Star Frontiers, yeah, I've worked on some stuff with some other people on the psionics for more of the Alpha Dawn rules. And you do have to be careful with it because it can change the nature of the game. And if you don't want that changed, absolutely don't do it. So you do have to set some rules, power gaps. Out of the psionic systems I played, I have to be honest, with D&D, we ended up using Gamma World system. It worked better than the points and trying to figure out. And then they, like, because you have like Eldritch, and then they went to what was in the DM's guide and the player's guide, and you had to have 2 books to figure it out. And Gamma World system, it had a nice chart. It was easy to figure out. You could gloss it.
Yep.
And it
had,
worked
like,
better.
Times a day, right? I
Right.
think it was like limited times a day or something to that effect, as opposed to the point system from AD&D First Edition. That was that whole system for a lot of people was really difficult to wrap their heads around.
Well, it can be, and I've been going over I was going over the psychic system anyway because I wanted to put psychics into what I was setting up for 5e, and 5e didn't have anything when I started doing that, other than what was in like for the sorcerers or whatever, weird classes, too many classes in 5e to be honest, and so I was trying to figure out something for 5e because I wanted Sonic dwarfs. That's what I wanted. And I was working on that, and then they started developing stuff, and then they went in totally different direction that I'm not happy with at all. I have Tasha's. I'm not happy where they went. So I started pulling out all my old stuff. I started ordering stuff I never had before, and I started looking through everything. And I think what I might do for my channel is do like, here, I have a character, it's Human X, and Human X is going to be a psionic, and we're going to make him a psionic under different systems and see how he plays out using those system rules. And because I've got lots of systems, some of them are outdated, but I've got them here. And I was thinking that was maybe an interesting way to show how psionics works against like the same monster, but for each system. I have to admit, the 5e in the testing, they came up with a system that was fun, that used like dice. You got so many dice that you rolled per level for your psionic ability. And if you hit the maximum on that dice, then it meant you used it all up until you took a certain amount of rest. And if you went below a certain amount, then you got to like you were restraining yourself for that big push, and you could roll again. And it was fun, and it made the psionics kind of go ebb and flow and a little bit unpredictable. And they jumped that. And I was like, no, that was cool. That was like the coolest thing I've seen so far. Everything else I've got here from whatever system is like a point-based system, or it's like a automatic skill system, like 100% is going to work. And I think if you're getting attacked psionically, you should be able to try to defend yourself, as lame as it might be against the psionic. And some of the systems, they take that away. And I don't like that. I like players and the NPCs to be able to defend themselves just a little bit and not have like a monolithic, power against them. It just doesn't seem right.
No, it's
And
absolutely completely unfair. That was one of the
I like
issues
the balance.
with AD&D is there was for the most part a lot of people were completely defenseless, and we've seen too many movies and TV shows where the hero or the heroine were able to kind of do something to kind of just not be completely dominated by the bad guys with the psionics.
Well,
Now,
even
for me,
like you watch
go ahead.
like Star Trek, and you got Spock doing his little mind thing through the wall to the guard, right? The guard gets to put up a fight. If you watch it, he tries. He's like, oh, what's going on? Oh,
Yep.
it's not automatic. And I don't believe in that kind. There should always be a chance of failure. Period. It's just reality. I know this from life. And that's one of the problems I have with a lot of the systems is that chance of failure is taken out. That doesn't matter to me. Magic, clerical magic, arcane magic, psionics. I mean, that's just space magic, let's be honest. It should be there. And also, but I'm okay with psionics being in fantasy because when I go to like I live in a village. It's literally the village of. That's what I live in here in America. I live in a village. And when the village has or has had in the past a psychic fair, if you go to that, you will see Reiki workers, so they're working the energy. You will see people who do prayers to angels, so that's more your divine stuff. You will see people who are doing palmistry, so that's more of your arcane woo-woo. You will see people who are talking about mediumship or ESP, so that's more of your psychic stuff. So it's all there in kind of like a little cosmos. If you wander around the place, and people selling their candles, selling like love candles, it's all there. So I see that, and I go, that's what it would be like in D&D, or in some little backwards planet in the frontier. There would be this, they'd be doing their weirdness over there. And so it should be available, but it should kind of be always in that kind of gray area as well. Like, does it work? Does it not?
Are there charlatans about?
Yes, there should be some charlatans. I've been joking that I need to make a gully dwarf. They're not popular right now for a variety of reasons, but I need to make a gully dwarf. That's a wizard. And nobody's sure how his magic works.
Right.
Is he a charlatan? Is it just coincidence? Or is there actually something going on? And I think it would be hilarious.
You brought that take on it because our friend Nathan, who was just in the chat, he and I do a quantum show that we talk about, real world, psychic abilities, UFOs, Bigfoots, everything paranormal. And when this show is over, I will be heading over there to co-host that show with him. So you brought up some good points that actually made me chuckle a little. Glad you did so. For me, when I'm thinking about psionics, I've got a couple of schools of thought. One is if the players are suddenly beset by psionics, they're going to want psionics to defend themselves, like you said. So if the bad guys are, kind of kicking their butts around because, like say they, tangle with some mind flayers or, something like that. I use that because there's lots of other, sci-fi psychic stuff, but everybody here knows what a mind flayer is.
Yep.
If they're getting their butt handed to them and they make it out alive, they're going to be like, GM, what can we do to defend against that? And I'm like, glad you asked. And then I'll, give them a couple of, ways to do that. I'll sort of bait them into it. They're going to be like, well, maybe one of us should see if we're psychic or try to, learn the force or whatever. You know what I mean? The other
The
way,
cone hat of the great sage Alinium.
right. The other way that I found very effective that most people I know absolutely have loved was through crystals. The
Yep,
players
crystals.
find, they find some gems. Amongst the gems are some crystals. Do they radiate magic? No. But you notice they kind of have a little bit of a glow to them. And then they explore that a little more. And lo and behold, maybe there's enough for everybody to have one or for one person to have them all, if that's, how the cookie crumbles when we do party loot. We have in my games, we have a very structured way of dealing with party loot, with party picks, we call them. You get a pick, and we go around the table until the treasure's gone. And, sometimes people will leave stuff like that because they want to grab something they're more familiar with. And one player's like, crap, nobody's taking the psychic gems? Okay, I'll take another one. And I'll take another one until all the treasure's gone. So if I were to hand out some gems that awaken psychic abilities within that player, I'm not giving it to them because they've earned it, and they get to kind of choose who or when or if or however those things, come into play later on, because someone's like, well, yeah, I've got this with this blue gem. What does it do? Well, glad you asked. If you focus on it and attune yourself to it and, all that stuff, you can then do this thing, 1, 2, 3, 7 times a day or whatever. And then suddenly they're like, oh, this is pretty cool. But what happens if I lose it? Well, you don't want to lose it. You can leave it in the room and see if you can still do it, and if they're kind of getting into it, I might, allow them to somehow, maybe, develop more psychic abilities. I know from, the quantum show, and I've been studying, psychic phenomenon and things like that for a long time. I know there are a lot of people out there that have made different claims, and I can work with that in a game, fashion that, we could use this theory or that school of thought or another school of thought. So that's how I would do it or have done it in the past. And it works out, and it doesn't break the game, and it weeds out the people who are not interested. Well, but the people who are, they can take their chances.
There's a lot to draw on too. I mean, even Edgar Rice Burroughs, I assume everybody's familiar with, at least the first book where John Carter goes to Mars, Princess of Mars, I believe it's called.
Right, where he gained telepathy.
Yeah, he starts out as the Western, right? Getting chased by the Indians. Well, I really like those books. So I ended up on the Herbs
you get bonus points
forum.
for being a John Carter fan here, Laura.
Okay, well, I came to it late, but when I did find them and start reading them, I was like, whoa, this is great. So over in the Herbs site, I read an article about learning to read a book based on, like, you're an investigator, like you're a detective solving a crime. And you learn a lot more from the book doing that than just reading it for pleasure. So I went back and reread a bunch of books that way. And Herbs was one, Princess of Mars was one of them. And he actually wakes up when he's describing Mars, and he wakes up there. Herbs is really subtle about his crystal power. It's in those books. it's really subtle. He never just goes, yo, crystals make things better, the psychic abilities, but they're there. And so, like, when Carter wakes up, he's all naked and discovering he's Superman. He actually wakes up in a ring of crystal, but it's really subtle. And then when they talk about like devices and stuff, there's usually crystals and colored rays involved with those crystals that makes things work on Barsoom. But he never goes into it because John Carter as well. He's a braggart. He's a liar. He's a little bit cruel, and he's a hypocrite. So, but you only figure that out if you read the book as a detective, like you're an officer looking for the criminal. And yeah, Earp took a lot of shots at society in those books. I was actually quite surprised how much poking he did, and nobody catches it in modern society. It's rather sad. But those crystals, our whole like cultural mythos. You got the crystal power. That's part of Western society with this psychic stuff. You also have copper, copper tubing, copper this, copper that. That's also tied in there. And pyramid power. Do not forget pyramid power in the 70s.
Oh yeah,
I remember pyramid power, and I like to use it. There's the pyramid. Suddenly your psychic ability is enhanced, man.
Yep, I remember that. And we laughed.
Use that.
And now I laugh so much. I want to say hi to
have
a couple
fun with
of people. Shauner, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're getting a kick out of the discussion. He's a big name out there, when it comes to Traveler and Star Trek. Huge fan of both. Kevin, welcome. How you doing? Echo, hanging out. Copper in my pillows for some reason, Shauner. I don't know what that means, Shauner.
I heard the child.
Oh, is that anyway? No, that was
the child.
The copper in the pillows. That's just because you're hot.
No, that's Bo. No worries, Bo. No worries.
Got it.
Yeah, I got a book on Atlantis that's new agey from the 70s, and it's a hoot to read. I'm telling you.
Sure.
Copper and crystals everywhere in it, and psychic ability.
Well, with copper, that just represents energy. I mean, whether it's crystals, if you look at the piezoelectric effect, and that's one of the reasons I think that a lot of people don't mind subtle science. The other part is, when we're talking about this, is in character. Again, if you allow the communication from long distances where you know that someone's in trouble, and to be fair, I've seen that with my mother, where she's come back and said there was something wrong at this time and whatever. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I opened up my lunch and there was something wrong with it. And that always got me more depressed than like something else, which was weird. Anyway, but to say that there's this psychological, there's if you want to call it a psychic wavelength that comes into there. I think that's a big factor into the sci-fi aspect. And again, this comes down to by making it really subtle and not making it overpowering. I know that Bo was talking about, time travel. That is irrelevant to me. It's about creating a great story for it, and it doesn't have to come true. It's more of this one thing I liked about Dune. You see the different paths and where they can lead, but it doesn't tell you where they will actually go. And then, if you've read Dune, the part where he says he's blind at a certain distance, he can see like what's way ahead, or he can see in a little bit for one person, but like he's in the middle of a fight and he's like, I don't know what's going to happen.
You can only see the potentiality of things and not the guaranteed outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that whenever we're talking about is I like really bringing it. To me, psionics are just, I want it to be so subtle. And I saw that Elfbait talked about skills. No, to me, if you're going to do it, it's going to be unpredictable. It is going to be, the way I like it is I like it being unpredictable, very subtle, and game breaking. It's more of game enhancing aspect. So, players never, it doesn't, it doesn't encourage them to increase their strength in it because it is so subtle in that aspect. But
Well, that's why I like what
I
they
could
did
see
with the
some very
experimenting stuff in Unearthed Arcana with the dice, because it made it unpredictable, and it made it to where you could use up all your ability, and then you were done until you recharged.
Well,
And
I could see some
so you were not
basic.
invisible.
I could see some basic psionic skills, like you can move a thing, or you can detect someone's thoughts if they're thinking maliciously about you or something like that. But
Absolutely.
very, very simple, very low, very few. Keep it to less than 5 or so.
I would even say this much is I like it where it's
And I mean the entire table, not what your character can do.
Well, no, I mean, and when I say unpredictable, the player doesn't determine what goes on for the most part. That's what I'm saying is you don't know when your premonitions are coming out. You're not doing divination like you would see, and you're not doing that. You're sleeping. You're picking up. What I want to say is you're psychically sensitive is probably a better phrase. Is what I like. Rather than being psychically,
the stray thought comes to you. You don't go looking for it.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you sleep, or again, like you were talking about, that the whole part where it allows you to get into the. But this is where I got into: is this psionic or not? The ability to look at micro expressions. That those little effects is, and you see that in Dune. In Dune, they do a lot of that. Then he does a little bit more. Yeah, go ahead.
And there should be a cost to it. I mean, that's another thing. It's like everybody thinks like you just go in there and you do woo-woo, right? But like when I went to college, I actually took classes on this stuff, believe it or not. And this kind of stuff, it takes work for the, if you accept that some people are gifted a certain way, they can't just do this stuff without a cost. There's a cost involved, physical, emotional. And so they can't just go out there and superhero it all the time. It's not realistic. And then the people who try to force it, like take a drug to open up their mind, they have a big chance of becoming schizophrenic or something. It's no joke when you actually get into the cultures that are doing stuff in cultural anthropology. When you're trying to understand their religion and you get into kind of like this altered states of mind stuff, you're playing with some fire there, and it doesn't always go good for people. And when Westerners try to do it because they tend to lack respect, they usually fry their brains pretty bad. So there should be cost to your activities, just like there's a cost when you do magic, usually in role-playing games. And that should be part of the balance.
You just run out. With magic, usually with magic, you just run out for the day. Now, what about say you've got a player who actually wants to run a psychic character? There are a lot of games that allow that right from the get-go. Traveler being a big one that Rick, welcome to the show, and Shauna and I are big fans of, where you're probably not going to be like Jean Grey or Professor X or something like that, where you can use just about every ability in the book at one time or another. Like Shauna just said, you're probably going to be like master of one or more related type abilities.
Right.
Owen, how would you handle a player who in a sci-fi game wanted to go the psychic route?
I'm just going to say, hey, Bo, could you just mute yourself for, you ready to talk? Because I think we hear all your kids in the back. And as much as I love kids, there we go. Thanks. What's that? I'm sorry, what was that?
If you had a player who really wanted to run a first level psychic type character in a sci-fi game you're running, how would you go about using that? Is there a game system you'd prefer to use, or is there some way you could, tweak a current game system to, make for a happy player, at least in the beginning?
There are a couple things. If I'm running a sci-fi game, I don't want strong psionics for the most part, not early on at least. I'm like, look, you first have to learn the system. We're talking new player. We're not talking about an experienced player, which is very different. If you're playing Numenera, and I saw that, 28 millimeter had his stuff in there, is that's very different if you're playing Numenera, because that's built into the game. That's part of this very system. If you're going to do something like Mutant Chronicles, there are options to put stuff in there, but I want it to slowly bring it in, because learn the system in the world first before you start trying to bring in the psionics. And for Traveler, look, I like 2300. That's not the Imperium. No, if I'm playing a science fiction game, for the most part, I want it to be like that. And I'm not saying everything's fair. Again, it's one thing doing subtle and saying, look, we'll give you subtle powers over time. Like, oh, okay. Just understand that they're not going to be the primary. You're not. But all too often, I want to play. How do I want to put this? I want to play a Jedi and whatever sci-fi game you're getting it.
And the most powerful version of that too.
Yeah.
Which I don't like.
Yeah.
I do not like that.
I don't even want to say the most powerful. It's like, okay, but I want to play this. I'm like, look, you got to work your way up there. I want you have to find a teacher. Again, it depends on the game. 40K. Okay, fine. You start off with that. You understand that you're opening yourself up. And even with 40K, depending on how you want to play it, how well do you know the world? Sometimes that's what goes into it. And that's just my personal feeling, is if you're a new player, what all it comes down to is, and I want to just bring up Mage's musings on how he's doing his advanced OSE. Okay, guess what? You show me you can play your characters first, and then we're going to talk about
The add-ons.
Yes. And as you come in, and I think that's one of the things that comes in there.
Well, last week
I agree.
Last week I was suggesting injury penalty if you didn't succeed, and that progressing the more you use your psionics per, say, a turn or a conflict of some kind, like a battle or whatever.
Perfect example. Anyone remember the movie Firestarter, where the guy would bleed with his nose every time?
Well, that's kind of what I was suggesting. Or I was using the Babylon 5 Mindquake for new telepaths as my example, but but that not going away the more you become skilled. It just being an option of continuously things can go bad for you.
And I'm not even disagreeing with what Connor says. Can learn to be psionic. Maybe, but that still comes down to is I want a major traumatic event and not something that happened before. That said, is he talked about this. We all talk about sci-fi and we always think about space, but let's not forget Judge Dredd and their
right, Judge Dredd.
That's a great game.
Yeah, great comic, man.
So.
Something should happen to bring it forward.
Like it could be a technological augmentation.
Naturally have it to start with. And there should be something that there should be a negative that goes with it in the game mechanics, whether that's a negative quirk or whether that's
more so than a wizard or magic user would have.
Well, when I'm kind of an evil DM, guys. So I think that your magic can fail you. I think that your God can go, nope, the answer today is no. That spell's not going to work for you, that prayer. And I think your psionics can go quirky. And just like your fighter can fumble his sword and cut his foot. So I try to work something into my systems where if things go bad, it doesn't have to be catastrophic, but no one feels 100% confident, and in some cases, you don't want to play with some forces without thinking about it first. And something like psionics, it should have a downside, only because otherwise you end up playing a superhero game, and if that's what you want to do, cool, play superheroes. But then the monsters get to be super villains. And if that's what we're doing, if we're doing Iron Man and Captain America and Superman, that's fine. But then the villains have to match
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
because I'm cool with the superhero game, but if that's what we're doing, otherwise, if we're doing something more subtle, something more dangerous, then the danger has to be there, even if it's funny danger, but it's got to be there so that
Absolutely.
people
Or you have
are
no challenge and no real game.
right.
I'm going
Yeah,
to bring
well,
up.
you got to have resource management, and psionics would fall under that resource management.
I'm going
So
to.
that
No, I
then
no, I understand, Laura. When you're talking about resource management, in some ways, I don't really feel it's so much. Well, I want to say health is a resource management, but it's not the same thing as you'd have with spells or spell points.
Mhm.
I kind of like the idea that it's like we were talking about with draining. How much health are you going to lose to do X? And I think that sometimes, not that I've played it, I know that anyone. I tried looking over at it, I just never got into it. But what is it, Trinity and Aberrant and that kind of world where they really go way off. Part of it just feels, and I hate saying this, but no, actually I don't. This is the way I am. I don't like superhero games. I just don't.
Fair enough.
I every time people bring up, oh, we can do the superheroes, I said, it doesn't appeal to me.
But they like you.
Demigods are close enough. It's what was that? Sorry.
Nice, Graham. Nice.
They
I
like
say
you.
they like you. The
Well,
superhero game.
but I mean, it's the kind of thing of I find them boring. I find them, to give the challenge just ramps it up way up, and I like that kind of grittiness. How do I want to put this? And I understand everyone talk about, don't play your person. Well, my personality is I like to see people struggle and get through, and yes, we're going to talk about heroic pulp, which is different than super heroic pulp.
right.
That's the way I feel about it. Is whether people like it or not is theoretically you can become Batman. You can't become Superman because you don't have those powers. And
Well, you kind of need a crap ton of money, but yeah.
well, no, I mean Batman. Well, yeah, but theoretically, if you had bought enough Bitcoin early on, you could get up there. If you lucked out and you'd be willing to train yourself, that's what it really comes down to. Is I like the aspect of severe and hard training, which again comes down to, if you want to train your body to resist cold, you have to train yourself to do breathing exercises. That's the things I like, and that's what we consider. Oh, that's superhuman. Well, it's not really superhuman per se, except the sheer mental aspect. This is why we read people like David Goggins. How can he run 200 miles with broken feet? I can't do that. And you really just come down to that's because mentally I'm just too weak to do so. It's not that.
I think it depends on what's chasing you.
Well,
Hey,
yeah,
hey, Graham. Graham. Graham, it's your turn. It's your turn.
Well, like, when you get into psionics too, it is good to have a penalty of some kind. Like when I have run psionic characters, like that lady I took for an example earlier, she had feedback that would, if she failed, she would start to get a bloody nose, and she could be knocked out for a day, and that was kind of, she kind of accepted those risks to be that player, to be that psionic player. And her animals could also, if she got feedback and she was psychically linked to her animals, they could also get feedback and causing them stress and not wanting to be connected with her. They would literally, in their own way, they would repel her connection, so that she couldn't use them for a while. And you should always have, like Omanal said, you gotta kind of have, like, if you're having a superhero game, you're having a superhero game, and like you said, you got Batman, you got Tony, he can use his brain to make these wonderful machines, Iron Man and so forth. But it's just, I don't know. I did do a couple of really good traveler games where there was a lot of psionics, and the players would have they would actually, if they weren't very good at psionics, they could equip themselves with an anti-psionics helmet that would at least prevent people possibly or creatures from getting into their head. That was a particularly nasty one. It involved basically a Cthulhu kind of crossover where they were fighting. They went into a dark portal to save a planet, basically, and they were fighting Cthulhu monsters that could literally cause them a great deal of stress. And even the psionic players that were able to use their abilities to fight, they were they were really outmatched. It was a hard game, and proving to the players that you can always be bested no matter how good you think you are. And Cthulhu, he wasn't happy. He doesn't like people eating calamari. He has his issues with humanity, and it's understandable. And, he's right there. He gets it.
So how would you what would you do with a player who wanted to start a psychic at first level kind of character?
I would just do it easily, like Oben said. I would just do very like reading someone's mind, maybe knowing something's going to happen. Uh, Basically, just light little things, maybe being able to maybe manipulate small objects with their mind, maybe if they had that ability. But mostly just like read mind, know something's going to happen. Maybe I thought the psionic link with animals was pretty good because I've seen people that really uh, I wish I was like that, but you're kind of like that with your dog, Shadow. You kind of connect with Chewy in a way. Not everybody has that, and just light little connections like that. The dog knows what you're going to do. He kind of knows what you're thinking. He knows, and it's weird sometimes when that happens, but it's not anything massive. So just gentle, maybe rise it a little bit, depending on the players too. If they're cool players and not trying to get too much out of it or not trying to overplay it, kind of just ease them into it. But like you said, you do get the Luke Skywalker players. I remember one guy named Yar who said he was just as good. We were playing a Cthulhu U, and Cthulhu U is where you literally roll yourself up without rolling yourself up. You write down your stats. It's a pretty fun game we invented. Basically, you write down my highest skill is find cheap food. That's my highest skill. Comes in handy if you're hungry, but and he said he was just as good as Bruce Lee. He could go toe to toe. We all thought that was very fun. He got killed really quick in the game. So he found out he wasn't quite as good as Bruce Lee.
Well, I think too, people maybe don't think about some side effects. So let's say you have somebody
That's
playing
true.
a telepath. Okay. So what would it be like if you're in a room and you can hear everything everybody is thinking,
Oh
like
yeah.
their grocery shopping list,
Yep.
uh,
I'd be able to shield your
how
mind.
they're ticked off at their spouse, the report they got to turn in, and all that they're having anxiety over a
Wasn't there
test
a
they
really
got to
good
do tomorrow.
Twilight Zone like that?
Yep.
I
Right.
think Twilight Zone
Yeah.
It
did that.
drive you
Really
up the
well.
wall. Telepathy is not a gift, let me tell you, if it's working right.
The other part is we're talking about divination is if you're getting these dreams, maybe you didn't sleep well. Maybe you get a negative during the day. I mean, not everything has to be hit points. It can
And
just
that's
be
true.
a negative
Yep. Good point.
aspect of you just functioning. It's like, man, why do you look like you're hungover? Like, well, I didn't sleep well. Why not? Because I kept sensing that there was an alien somewhere in there. They're like, should we go check out the hold and see what we have in the cryogenic chamber? Stuff like that, which I think was
Right.
That's a good
alien
one.
versus.
Or if your game has a rest mechanic, it just doesn't apply for that night.
That's true.
Yeah.
Most games do, so.
That's true. If you
How about
were,
you, Justin?
Everything sounds pretty cool so far. As the resident noob at this table, um, I'd say there are things that would work in some circumstances and wouldn't work in others. Obviously, you gotta pick and choose how you're gonna go with it. But yeah, you definitely don't want a Luke Skywalker even in your Star Wars game. Like
no,
that guy's supposed to be the best that there ever
Yeah.
was.
Hey,
So why
Paul
are any
Craig.
of
Yeah,
your
you can't have
Jedi's
the
that
you
powerful or
can't have a
more?
you can't have that sort of, Kwisatz Haderach in your first
Yeah,
level game and everybody
yeah,
else knows it. Then they're like, okay, we're just supporting characters. Well, I'm
yep.
not going to be able to make it next week because I have a chance of actually being the hero in anybody else's game.
Right.
yeah,
They all have a chance to be the hero or
Absolutely.
the heroine. And
yeah.
also, let's face it, you watch the Star Wars movies, read the books, whatever. But I basically just watched the movies and only read one or two books. The thing is with the Force, hey, you get exposed to it, and it can go either way. When you really get
Yeah,
down to it, you can go either way. So throughout, like if you're
It's
doing
true.
something like that, throughout that character's life, there should be checks to see if they're losing it, either going insane, going evil, however you want,
yeah,
however it works in the game, where they go from being a player character to the off the rock NPC that now is the problem for the party.
That's
And
true.
like I said, checks and balances. This idea that, oh, you're just good. And once you get this ultimate power, you're going to stay good.
yeah, right.
Maybe, maybe
That's a
not,
really
you
good point,
know?
you guys. I hadn't thought about that because when you think about psionics, that's a power that's it's not like other things, other classes or races or other powers or magic or things like that. This is something that, for the most part, nobody knows what you have or what you can do or how you're going to use it. And for the most part, nobody knows how to get rid of it, or when you might be using it. It could really lead to some moral issues. Just you know for lack of a better way to say it, what alignment are you really now?
That's true.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a good point.
And even in a non alignment game, I mean, where that's not
Yeah,
even there, like
yeah.
Star
Just
Trek doesn't have any alignments. But
how many times
what
is
is
a
the
Star
person
Trek
going to do with
character
that power? And
exactly how
like
many
what I
times
took,
does a Star Trek character gained these weird abilities or whatever, and suddenly started thinking, I'm better than all you little, you
Barkley.
know
peons, yeah.
right, or in the original series, or even in Next Generation. I mean, mind you, it
Barkley
was
in
Right.
the
a
holodeck.
few,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
It's a thing. And it's even a thing in cultural anthropology. So back to college. Um, they have all these terms for all the different kinds of religion and magic systems and what this
Hmm.
means. And so, like, a witch in cultural anthropology is somebody who can just think it, think the evil thoughts, and it happens to you. But they actually had no term for somebody who can think good thoughts. They still don't, and have
Yeah,
those things happen to you. So I would say, I guess that's a saint. But the fact is that somebody can think something and have it happen to you. That's like psychic as you can get, right? Um,
pretty much.
yeah. Um, as a layer, but then you go up to the next thing. Okay. You do different types of magic, and before you get to proper religion, of course, they got like a little pyramid scheme going. But anyway, um, so you got the person out there doing magic. Well, in a lot of societies, including ours, anything that you can do to heal, you can also use to kill.
Or
They
hurt.
go
That's true.
together. Yeah, to hurt. That's why the snake is on the caduceus. The snake represents wisdom and knowledge and all this stuff. It also represents poison and death. So So the two things go together. So once you start understanding that, you kind of like there's this togetherness. The skill to heal is also the skill to kill.
I'm gonna,
And it works that way with everything.
no, I don't disagree with that. I think the other part that, how do I want to put this, is you talk about a lot of the negatives and things like that. Is let's not forget, you can talk about the insanity. Let's not forget Firefly, which most of us have really enjoyed.
Great show.
Awesome.
Now, would I allow the character to be that? Probably not. Sometimes I think that when you start getting a more powerful psionic, they are better off having NPCs with major drawbacks, where the players are like, you know what, we're carrying nitroglycerin with us. Don't shake it very hard. Let's transport very carefully, and then the player starts understanding that I don't really want to be this tortured soul. You know, to do that is like,
yeah. You know what?
If I was running the game with someone playing someone like River, I would make that player roll to see if they go into a catatonic shutdown instead of a kick-ass move at the beginning of their combat move. Because she did that half the time. You're muted.
She was completely unpredictable. Absolutely unpredictable.
You're muted, Omina.
I mean, but by being
She was a wild card.
unpredictable, I don't want that as a PC. I don't want to say, look, you know what? You're only going to have control of your character 25% of the time.
Make it a low number.
No. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's the point of, if you have something really powerful in that aspect, it's like, no, they're an NPC, and you understand why they're an NPC because you don't want to do that. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, if you get a really good player, and this again comes down to, you're not a new player, you're an experienced player, we'll talk. But if you're just beginning, until I understand what you're doing, and everyone's talking about, oh, Luke Skywalker was just a Jedi. The thing is that he moved up in there, but even then, does it make it that much more interesting for characters? Say, you know what? If we're going to go for the old D&D, your character, every time he has to go up in training, has to disappear for a year or two. I mean, I'm not.
You did that.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, but it was like a couple of weeks tops.
No,
In Star Wars.
No, even in Star Wars, I think it was what? How long was it between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi? I mean, it was a while there in certain cases.
And he had to go through some traumatic stuff too.
Yeah.
No, I mean the time he was on Dagobah, it wasn't but a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
No, I think it was supposed to be a couple of months.
Well,
but that's not how it's movie.
Well, even for Dagobah,
time lapse.
Wait. Even for Dagobah, how much could he move? Oh, congratulations, Luke! You moved a lightsaber. You know, you're not as great as you think you are, and then you got your ass kicked. So terrible.
You got the rock and put off the ground and dropped it.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's my point is that it was very, very minor.
Exactly.
Up there. So,
it's
okay, Bo.
That's true.
I'm going to go off on a limb and be completely the opposite of everyone in the group, and I'll tell you why. If I play a game with a point buy system for powers and abilities, the player is disadvantaged in only spending their points in the psionics, and they've hamstrung themselves in the game by not having any other abilities, and therefore they've made themselves weak in the game as a matter of natural consequence. They don't have any of the. They don't have the fieldcraft or marksmanship or the ability to find traps or climb walls or do backflips.
Will do the same thing.
Yeah. So if you play in any point buy system, if you spend the points to have the psionic abilities, and if you have to take quirks and disadvantages to offset that point buy, you've already put yourself in a situation where you've made yourself weak. I, as the game master, don't have to do anything because the system's already done it for me. And I hate to hamstring my players. I hate to hamstring my players by giving them an additional weakness by making them weaker again compared to the rest of the party. If you've got 2 points to spend, you can spend your 100 points any way you want.
No, it should be. We're discussing the mechanics of the game for balance purposes. Absolutely. So, like in GURPS, it has the quirks and the point system and all that. So yeah, that
Does too.
would be fair, you know. And when you're talking like a class, like a psychic as a class, I think Arjun has that, and they get specific things going up. Um, but at the same time, there's some downsides. Or an old D&D, like
There
Eldering,
should be
there's
downsides.
a
I'm saying there should be
downside.
I'm saying I shouldn't
Well,
have to.
as you go up,
Downsides.
something goes down to balance it out, so that it's just the mechanic is expressed differently because they're not putting their strengths. So in a point buy system, you get to choose where your points are going.
I'm going to bring this
And
up. The question is, what type of game do you want to play? I mean, because we're discussing, I think, two different things. Is I agree with Bo. If you're playing a point-based system, that's great. The question
absolutely,
is, if I, as the DM, want to have to deal with that? The answer is probably no. Whereas if you're playing a 40K game, it depends on how am I playing science fantasy? Am I playing just science? And that's what I think it comes down to. If I'm playing Rogue Trader or Star Wars, my hope is, I'm not saying it's great.
I've been reading Mork and Bork. That sounds like fun.
But I don't even like. I hate the art. I can't even take that game. Anyway, but if you have one of those games out there, the hope is that it's been play tested enough that it makes the other players viable. And I know that if you're looking at the old D6 Star Wars. By having that, I think, but so much of it depends on the type of game you want to play, and that's what we're really discussing. Is how would you?
I want to play the game that my players want to play. I'm going to make a world, a universe, and even in the universes that I've created, if a player is, again, as long as it's not a 13th Warrior type player who wants to be the odd man out, the person that intentionally breaks the party. If a person wants to play a psionic, a telepath, a pyrokinetic, a telekinetic, someone who can travel through the astral plane, all these traditional psychic abilities, regardless of the mechanic and regardless of the backstory, just the way the game works, if the player is willing to play the game and not just play the character sheet, I'm 100% for it. Even if it means that there's a learning curve for me, even if it means I've got to break out 2 additional rule books and try to incorporate them into the game, I'm going to try to accommodate my players if the players are mature. And again, I can, in a science fiction game, whether it's something, whether I'm playing something as far-flung as like Marvel's X-Men, and agree, TV shows are not role-playing games. TV shows have the ability to be like morality plays and bring all kinds of different things that I might not necessarily want at a table where we're just having fun. People play role-playing games mostly to break things, shoot stuff, and collect the loot.
That's true.
And regardless of the kind of game I'm playing, again, if the players are mature and willing to overcome the learning curve of learning, of using, again, what we're talking, mental powers, or even magic for that matter, because I'm not going to treat magic and psionics any differently in my game. They're going to be.
Ultimately, they do the same stuff, so
they do the same
they
stuff.
should be able to coexist.
So,
yeah.
a lot of players have a prejudice against one or the other, right? We can play Forgotten Realms, and you can have, a 15th level magic user, but you can't have an equivalent person who uses only their mind. There should be a way to reconcile the two within the same system.
I don't like what they went with in Forgotten Realms currently for 5e.
Sure, just an example. I don't particularly care for a lot of stuff that goes on in a lot of games. I'm just saying that if we're gonna have one, we may as well have the other. And whether it's rare, unpredictable, and dangerous, or whether it is cheap as chips and you can buy it on the street corner, as long as we treat it with some degree of consistency across the board, at least in my game. And again, maybe with Magic, one advantage you might have is that Magic might not work on every world. Maybe this world doesn't have any ley lines and you can't collect mana. But maybe on
Something
this
I do
world,
all the
there's a
time.
psychic gambling field, and your psionics don't work either. That's something you need to work out as the GM. And remember that as the GM, you're not just another player. You are the God Emperor of your universe, and whatever you say goes.
PSR universe. Okay, just for a second, little fun thing. I have PDFs of Star Empires and Star Probe, and I've played with them.
Oh, no
And
way. I thought I was the only
yes, I
person
do.
who owned those games. Wow.
Yeah. I got them
That's pretty cool.
along with the one the Mars game that they got sued over. Anyway,
I got
that's
that one
got
too.
really weird mechanics. But if you read the Star Empires has the first ever I've ever seen older than Traveler technological levels for civilizations in it. And if you go through there, and they have like what they call it, I want to say not subspace, it's like hyperspace technology. And they have all these different levels of hyperspace. If you go through and read it, you'll get down to one that allows gives you the technology, the owners of this technology, to like drop it off on a planet and cause that planet to function completely different. And it sends it into the Middle Ages, and only magic works on it, and science doesn't anymore. So,
You know
so,
what, Laura, real quick.
so Greyhawk is that world, and they actually had a lot of Star Empires ships crash on there, and
You know what,
because
Laura,
the star drives fail and they crash into it.
David A.
That's
Hargrave worked on this game called for Archive Miniatures called Star Rovers. You guys might recall when I did a review of that. It's got a technological level like that too that just is absolutely amazing. I got to get it to you guys because it's just
Star Rovers, that's cool.
Light years beyond what most people think after a certain point. It's just amazing, and it really the Traveler tech level is pretty nice, but this one just expands upon that, maybe even before Traveler. Off to check the dates, but it's your turn, Laura. If you had a player who wanted to run a psychic character, from the get-go in a sci-fi game, how would you handle it?
Depends a little bit on the game. I told you I'm partial to the Gamma World system because everybody can defend, and there's a chance of failure. But I would choose a system for it that would work with what I'm doing, and I would have them gradually amp up the same as I would with any other character. So if it's skill based, it would be skill based. If it's a class based system, then that's what we're going to do. If it's a feat based system or point buy-in, but I would allow them to build on those abilities that they start out with. And there would probably be a way to gain extra new abilities, but I want them to start out subtle, just like, you're not the best fighter in the universe. You're not the best marksman when you first get your gun. You're out there with your gun, Boot Hill or whatever, and you go up. So because that makes sense, you're not the best cleric or the best magic user when you start,
You're playing a game like maybe Traveler.
Unless you're playing, unless you're going in and you've got points to spend and you can totally front pack that character, or unless everybody agrees, hey, we're going to play 10th level characters. Okay, fine. Then everybody gets to be 10th level at something. But I want to scale it to the level that we're playing at, basically, so that it's a challenge for the players. Because if it's not a challenge, I've had a character like that. I had a character that got super powered too quick. And that character, it was no fun to play. Absolutely no fun to play. Yeah, I could do all kinds of cool stuff and oppress all the neighbors and it was a D&D campaign. Yeah, I could terrify all the kingdoms around me. And I was bored out of my brains. So I learned from that one time I played evil character. Playing evil wasn't fun from the player's side of the table. It wasn't challenging for me at all. I was overpowered. I could kill anything I wanted, and it was boring. So, and I was a kid, and I learned that. So,
Good for
uh,
you.
I try to keep the challenge when I'm DMing or game mastering or umpiring, whatever you want to call it, um, for the players, so they have skin in the game, and it's not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to win this role. Why bother? That's it's no fun. You want that gamble. You want that little bit of
I
risk.
couldn't have said it better myself.
The chance
Now,
of death.
before, yeah, thank you, thank you. I've seen a lot of that in my last year of playing online, and with the mentality of a lot of people out there, that especially with newer players, they expect the world and no consequences and everything to just go their way always. That, to me, that's not really a game. Maybe it's a storyteller game. I'm not really sure. I don't want to throw shade onto a game I've never really invested myself into. But if that's what everybody's up for, you might want to check with the GM, because in a lot of ways that just sounds like you're just facilitating their fantasies, and you know maybe that's
That's
not what
true.
you're in for. Maybe that's
Well, it
not
can
what
go
you're
south
as a game
too. I
master.
mean, I sat in one. I was the player in one game, and it went south so many ways. And the first thing that went south was, Village of Hamlet. We all got T1, most of us. Um, well, we ended up in the Village of Hamlet, and somebody got insulted. And before I could do anything as another player, um, their other characters went murder hobo. They killed like the whole village, and I was powerless to stop them. And I'm like,
That's awful.
well, there's got to be a consequence to this,
Yeah,
And the
really.
GM was like, oh, yeah, you just killed everybody. Sweet. And I'm like, okay. We Eventually that person didn't end up as the DM, by the way. But when I was DM, there was consequences, because that murder hobo thing came back to haunt the party. I made sure that came back to haunt the party, so they would learn not to wipe out villages. That's
Yeah, really.
That was one of the things that happened. But I was just like,
The
you guys did
creepy
what?
part is they enjoyed genocide.
Well, here's the great thing about D&D. Ghost. Tons of
Ghosts.
specters. There's a lot of stuff that comes back.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do
Yeah.
to make them. I
If you-
just put medieval law on them, and that was good.
If you want to be a murder hobo, make sure the people you're killing have green skin.
Yes, right. Yeah, they wiped down Hamlet. Hamlet. I was just like, what are you doing?
These are the rules of the game.
I had like lame spells, so I couldn't stop the rest of the party. I was just like, oh my god.
Orcs don't have green skin. Jeez, that's
We all know they're black. D&D told us so.
No, they're Asian. I found another site that said they're Asian.
Wow, Justin. Damn.
I
It's
gave up.
official
I gave up
narrative from the
understanding.
company.
No.
I gave up from understanding it. Yeah. Oh, just for the record, the other person who DMs, I'm gonna have to go here in a sec. I gotta go to dinner to deal with dinner. I gotta drive to another town. Pick up for dinner.
Enjoy.
But he's Native American, and he's like, they're saying orcs are Native American now, and I'm like, what? Aren't they pig people? I'm like, how did they become Native American? I go, well, last time I heard they were Asian, and the time before that they were African Americans. And he goes, well, what they doing? I go, I don't get it.
I don't.
And they're just stirring that big old pot. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, they're just reaching. They're just reaching to like ruin everybody's joy. And even if Tolkien was racist, I didn't know about it until this year. So how can all the rest of us possibly be racist if we didn't know?
The
I mean,
first time I heard this was in the 90s.
Here's the thing that
There'll
I
always
found.
be twisted elves.
Anyway, let's just keep back on psychics because I don't want to go down
Yes,
this
psychics.
Yeah, let's not go there. Yeah.
I have a bad habit of derailing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. That's a dead subject to me.
It was funny. It was worth it. Okay, check this out. Before Laura has to leave us, and I do hope, Laura, you will come back and join us when when you're able. You were a very interesting character. I'm going to put it that way. Okay. I really want to have some more conversations with you because being the old guy here, it's not often that I get to have conversations with people that remember some of the stuff, let alone own some of the crazy stuff that I own. I wrote down a list of psionic powers, and I just want to go over like the really weak ones that we may, because I've seen in some cases, I've literally seen at the very least claims that people in the real world have these abilities, or I've seen them as attributed to not psychic things, but in a way they kind of are, including healing abilities, whether it be for yourself or others, all kinds of different biofeedback abilities, astral projection. I literally know someone who's done this before, and I totally believe that they did it. You know who you are, and don't don't put yourself down for it because it's actually pretty amazing. Different levels of combat reflexes, including things like danger sense or intuition. The ability,
Intuition's a thing, man. I believe in that.
the ability to block things out mentally. Object reading, that's not really a big one when you think about it. In most D&D senses, it's a first level magic user spell. Whoopee, okay.
That's true.
Presence sense. I don't know if you've ever known someone was behind you or something like that, or you go into a room and someone's there, like your little brother or sister. They're they're there trying to spook you, jump scare you or whatever. Remote viewing is a thing our own government has spent millions of dollars researching. Not only our own government, but governments across the planet. Sensing evil, detecting lies. I said before, sixth sense and danger sense. Total recall, that being able to remember things, exactly as they happen. Don't take this the wrong way, but every one of us has known a woman who could do this. And then speed reading.
I'm not taking it the wrong way. I've known a few men who can do it.
Right.
No way.
I've been in trouble for stuff I haven't even done yet. It's like pre-crime.
Yeah. You're telling me the time, the day, and what the weather was like outside when this happened? When I said what?
That's one I didn't write down. Precognition. I've had instances where I knew things were going to happen a certain way. And I don't know how to explain it. There you go. Yeah. And I don't know how to explain it other than to lump it in with the psionic or psychic abilities that, if you do a little research, you're going to come across a lot of liars, a lot of people who are just telling stories. But there are a lot of cases where, there are people out there that I will give them the benefit of the doubt that they've actually had some of these, what I'm going to call minor abilities. I'm not talking about things like telekinesis or telepathy, but even empathy, as Grim brought up earlier, people who are really good with animals, the horse whisperer type of thing. Is that magic or would you call that psychic? Okay. There are a lot of things out there that, since we all talked about easing into it slowly,
that's the crossover that I was talking about. So like in anthropology and what there's like the anthropology terms, and then there's like the terminology we use as regular people. And so I think psychic is applied to the things we can't explain that don't seem to involve prayer or don't involve some component like chanting or or
crystals
yeah, or burning a certain leaf or holding a certain rocks, that kind of gets into the psychic system. But um
yeah.
but like if you can like lay hands on somebody, you're kind of in the realms of psychic. If you can and get an effect. If you can just know something and you can't explain how, then you're more in the realm of psychic. If you can affect change by just looking at something, then you're in the realm of psychic. Whereas when you go it in colloquial sense, and then when people talk about magic, they're like, well, yeah, they got a spell book and they're throwing sense in an incense burner or something, and they're calling on Veslabub or whatever, but they're doing
Eat
some kind
my
of
fires.
ceremonial thing. You're right. And
Ritual magic.
yeah, so that I think that's one of like the probably the core, and it's probably what you see in games because
I'm gonna.
too it's kind of breaks down that colloquial way, whereas when you go to the college classes, they'll be like, no, it's all the same, man. It just
Well,
builds, you know,
well,
you know.
what gets me about it is, and we're just going to bring up three differences: science or internal. Um, Cleric equivalent is divine magic that comes from your god. So if you, displease your god, you don't get it. And then most of the magic is concerned with getting external forces and being able to control them. And I think those are the three differences whenever we go into any systems. Where is your power coming from internally? And exactly what Shadow was talking about for danger sense. Most of these things we put as character attributes. None of us have any problems with them. And I think that's where we talk about the low level, because we kind of know that people have this. I mean, I've done clairvoyance when I was young. I have done, sometimes I can tell things going on before they occur or things like that. And I'm not saying that I'm psychic but it was almost always accidental rather than being trained, for one. And then as I got older, you just can tend to lose them. That it seems like that the ability to know that people are there. And if you really start looking into Dune, which I think is a great one, almost all the times of the pre-natural abilities is really just massive levels of observation from micro expressions, differences in voice, and things like that in certain cases. And then the other part is, not that we really want to get too much into it, is epistemic memories that were actually encoded in our DNA. If you actually look at it, why can the females not go down the male path? They can't go to the male path because they don't have the Y chromosome, whereas men can do both. And I mean, that's from a genetic level that you can look at that of what goes on.
Yeah,
And
you guys all know my son. He's picked up things not just from me without me teaching him. I've told the story about how he was dungeon mastering with his friends in the backyard while they were, playing make believe, and he's already doing the same, modes of speech that we as dungeon masters do, and his ability to pick
That's
up
cool.
languages. He's actually teaching himself German. Yeah, I can barely speak English, okay, but he's teaching himself German. And my father, he spoke 17 languages before he passed away. He was teaching himself
Wow.
Vietnamese by reading an English driver's handbook from the DMV and a Vietnamese. He was like learning it. He was just teaching himself that.
Very smart man.
I tried to take French and Spanish, and I had absolutely no luck with it whatsoever. But yet here's my son who's just picking this stuff up, and he's already planning on going into other languages after he gets German down. That's a genetic thing that skipped a generation from my old man and popped into my son. And the weird thing about it is,
that's the same with me.
my dad's second language, I think it was his first additional language, was in fact German. Him and my mom both, they met in a German class in college. So they hadn't taken Spanish or French, I don't think, maybe Latin, but my son speaks Spanish already because of his mom.
That's awesome.
So it's like he's almost going down the same path, when it comes, linguistically. The languages he's learning are like the same path my dad took, and he never met my dad. My dad passed away, 30 plus years ago, And here I see my son doing this stuff that I have had absolutely no influence on whatsoever. And his mom, she helped him with Spanish. That was it. And now
Well,
he's going down the same path. So the whole racial memory thing, like you were talking about, Omen, I'm seeing that as that's just a fact.
I'm
memories.
saying that they have actual proof of, if you have which sounds weird, apparently it rewrites your DNA. Literally, if you have a very traumatic event, it can actually rewrite your DNA. Up to the point that if you notice that some animals are afraid of other animals that they have never encountered in their life, like snakes and things. And some of that is, but some of these things come down. But let's say, for example, is if you learn how to fight with an axe or a sword, very vigorously, it can actually rewrite your DNA. So some of that skill comes into your DNA, which makes it easier for you to learn. I know but I think that sometimes the question comes down to is what kind of psionics do we want in the game rather than what are we going for? Well, and a lot of times we'd say, is it worthless? If I could only do, like, as a kid, I could do clairvoyance up to about 20 feet. Is it really that useful? Probably not, but it was one of those things. I just remember looking in on myself as I was doing things, or the, when your body leaves your, when your soul leaves your body and things go like this. I always find it interesting when you get someone like Niels deGrasse Tyson that's like, oh, that's not real. Oh, really? Have you never encountered stuff? Have you never had these weird things? Like, oh, that's just coincidence. Well, you know what? We're finding out there are different frequencies in the world and how they work. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say goodbye to Laura. She skedaddled on us. I don't know about you guys, but I enjoyed having her on the show. I hope you guys did too. I hope to hear from her again. I hear from her through. I met her through one of our videos, and we started chatting, about various things, in the comments, or as our friend Mr. Max says, the insult section, which is weird because I don't really get a lot of those, and I really appreciate that, especially since my son reads them, and maybe that's why he's my shield against the negativity, because people don't want to pick on a 14-year-old kid, but trust me, he could take it and he can dish it out. He can dish it out better than most of us. If you guys don't already know, you're lucky, because he is a smart ass.
He can dish it out.
So
he'll be a good leader one day.
So this was a fun conclusion to the previous episode. I think we really did really well here. Hopefully, it will help other people to not, just no psionics, never going to do it. Not in my world. That's cool if that's the way you want to run, but I think I showed with this short list of abilities that we know for a fact. We probably know somebody with one of them. Maybe it's ourselves, maybe it's a grandmother or something like that. There's a lot of things out there when it comes to, what's up here in the thinking meat that we just can't explain. And to me, it seems like a shame to just, just chalk it up to magic or just it's not going to happen in my game sort of mentality, when there's so many wonderful, weird and mysterious things going on here on Earth that we still can't explain. That's why I'm going to get a lot of, grief for this from my son and other people for watching Ancient Aliens, because, I really like that show because it does make me think. I don't believe 90% of what but there's a lot of stuff that, I can't, I don't have a time machine, so I can't prove it one way or the other, but it really does make you think. And in a lot of ways, the more I think about it, a lot of the things that we've actually attributed to magic could very well have always been some sort of psychic phenomenon throughout the ages here on Earth that we just, we had no other better explanation for it or word for it back in the olden days, that might have literally been some form of psychic phenomenon that we, helped build up this myth of magic, that, the whole time it was us, it was our brains doing stuff that we just, as a species weren't ready to understand yet. So hopefully this will, help people out there.
I'm going to bring up one thing, and I know that Elfbait did it, where he looked at his levels or skills for psionics, but I like what you did, which is a lot of them could be attributed to merits that your character has. Now, I mean, like in Bo's game, not that it's really come up, but I literally have danger sense as one of my attributes.
Same here. Same here.
That there's that aspect of okay, and that's what I mean by subtle. It's something that comes in that's useful without it being overpowered or something of that sort. I think what it comes down to is when we start breaking down, it's like you were bringing up really minor stuff, and I was too, about being at a very low level. Are we playing a superhero fantasy style game, or are we playing something with that we can relate really closely to our own world with higher technology? And I favor that aspect rather than the Traveler, where they're starting to do or some of these others of
like teleport.
Yeah, well,
the psionic ability of teleport in Traveler. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm going to arrive naked. You know what? I'm okay with that. If I could have one power, whether it be superpower, magic, or psionic, if you're going to put teleport on the table, I'm going to already start getting undressed. Okay?
I'm going to bring up an even better one there, where Shadow, for me, it's like, cool, I'm going to leave my clothes at work and just teleport into the bathroom so I can change. And guess what? I can live as far as I want and go back and forth. I mean, that sometimes I think where that's where you have to be careful, is because players will take in directions you never thought would go. It's like, well, how far do you live? I live 200 miles away. Well, how do you get to work? I get, it's like 1 minute before work. All right, bloop, bloop. All right, I'm good. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, take care of Laura. I know she's been on with Connell whenever I've been talking to him, so it's actually nice.
Oh, really? Okay. That's you know what? It's for me, being an old guy, it's really weird. Sometimes when I come across someone who literally has some of the same books that, mind you, I've been carrying around some of these books longer than some of you have been alive. I've had these same books in my collection, and I've never run Star Probe or Space Empires. I've never known anybody who was like, what the hell is that? That old TV guide looking magazine game? What? No, I got this shiny, brand new, Rift book or something like that.
If you ever want to schedule a couple of one shots of it, you got a player right here.
Yeah, you know what? Well, most of the games she was talking about, those two are actually more like board or war games. But yeah, I've got some old stuff. I've got some stuff that I absolutely will be running over this year. I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but I made a little promise out there that I'm going to do everything I can this year to really make this a better year than some of the years we've had recently.
Right.
And it's already panning out. I don't know if you guys have noticed it in little ways and maybe even big ways, but it's starting to feel like, despite the stuff, like the WizKid stuff and a couple of issues like that, it's been a pretty good year so far.
What happened with WizKids?
Yep.
I'm going to say
greatest answer of all time.
How do I want to put this? Is since social media's come out, people have become more aware. I know Tunnel said, are people getting crazier? And I said, no, I think we're just becoming more aware of it, because I had a girlfriend that used to go read the India Times or whatever, and just some of the stories that came out of there. And I talked to an Indian. He's like, I don't like it because it makes us look bad. I'm like, dude, you got like 1.4 billion people. That means that you're going to have however, whatever the population is in this area is going to be like, that much greater. It's not that anything else. Well, James, I think that we already talked to, that I said that's where people start cutting it. I think it's, what is the style of game do you want? In 40K, Psychers are spellcasters. They are magic users. To them, there's no difference. You're tapping into the warp. You're doing something, from that aspect. And I think but it really does change and alter the game. And for me, that's one of the reasons when I play science fiction, I want it to feel realistic in a futuristic setting, rather than being just, I'm just going to transport a fantasy setting into the future.
Which is 40K.
Well,
Or Starfinder.
well,
Starfinder.
Well, I mean, again, it depends on your setting for the whole thing. But
That's true.
but 40K is not science fiction; it's science fantasy.
It's fantasy with starships. It's not science.
Yeah, that's
You're giving it too much credit by calling it science fantasy.
It's the same. It is sci-fi. It's the same kind of sci-fi as. It's the same kind of sci-fi as John Carter of Mars. Really, you got to when you start mixing fantasy.
Those
No,
are quite-
and I'll tell you what. Look, you read the first book. How did
No.
John
No.
Carter really even go to Mars? Is it some kind of like? Is
Fever
it
dream.
transhumanist early a spiritual experience? He leaves his body and his spirit goes to Mars. He looks down in the cave and his body is still there. So this is the kind of things I'm talking about. There's different kinds. We talk about it's got a lot of pulp mixed in with it, and then it's got the body horror and the grim dark. But at its root, if you wave your hand, how does your star drive work? I don't know. I just wave my hand and it works. How does your anti-gravity work? I don't know. I just wave my hand and it works. So in that case, it's the same kind of science fantasy or science fiction, really, as like it's Buck Rogers, it's Dune, it's Flash Gordon mixed with Judge Dredd and every Paul Verhoeven movie you've ever seen in your entire life.
Lots of giant shoulder pads. You got to
Lots of giant shoulder pads, but they have the same giant shoulder pads in The Fifth Element.
Oh.
Did.
At least those franchises at least nodded to making the science look more like science.
Nobody's taking any of it. Nobody's taking any of it super seriously. That's my point.
No.
I'm not even taking my own game seriously, and it's my game, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I think the problem that we have with a lot of science fiction, especially the new science fiction, new science fantasy, is everybody wants to tell some kind of moral story. Everyone's got some kind of, they want to break some social barrier, and it's been going on since Star Trek, at least. But
yes, absolutely.
It's not even
too far off the rails. Without getting into those, science fiction is really whatever you say it is.
Yeah.
I made that point earlier when some folks like Magic and have no problems with in their games, and some folks like Psionics and have no problems with their games. But if you like one, you don't necessarily like the other. Why?
I personally just don't think they should look the exact same when presented.
No, the effects are the same.
If I ask for a piece of pizza, I don't want you to give me a bowl of ice cream. It's that simple.
If I give you a piece of pizza and then I call it a bowl of ice cream, but again, Magic, Arthur C. Clarke, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Well,
what if your psionics from your like Cerebro in the X-Men comics? You got a giant computer, you put it on your head, and now you're a psychic.
I'm going to say this much though, if we're going to talk about it, that's true. But I don't want to play tech level 15 or 16 plus in Traveler. I don't. 2300 is about as far as I want to go.
It's fine.
Because, that's
2300 is fun.
Well, my whole point is that
we keep bumping on this. I'm gonna have to literally look at it because I'm guessing that tech level from 2600 or what have you translates to a certain tech level in good old fashioned 12. Okay, I think that's kind of where we're at in Bo's game.
No, actually, I've kept most of our tech at tech level 10.
Okay, I wasn't sure about the numbers, but it sounds and feels similar to what I remember of it.
Most of our tech level. I don't think that I've got anything.
Take it apart, Omen, to really get a good idea. Hey, Charlotte, how you doing? Because what most people misconstrue about Traveler is the entire lore section in Traveler is optional. I've never used it, not even one iota of it. I've always done my own stuff, and
It's still
going from, planet to planet, you're going to have different tech levels. And a lot of times it's a lot of the lower levels, to be
Right.
honest. Because,
That's right.
that's just, if let's say you've got 18 tech levels and you roll 3d6 randomly every time to find your tech level, chances are you're probably going to hit the lower levels more often. The one
Just have
time
a
that you
bell
hit
curve distribution.
tech
Yeah.
level, one time you hit an 18 tech level planet, it's going to be memorable, and your players are going to feel like the cavemen showing up, and they're not going to want to, hang out there because they're just going to feel all kinds of inferior when they get there.
Well, I'm going to put it this way: is when I want to play, and again, this depends on what people want to play for. Is I kind of like grittier. The perfect example. I'm not saying everything's great. Is 2300. Up, and even with 2300, tech level 12 is as high as it gets, but most of it's 10 to 11 is what it really.
Okay, let me ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Do they have lasers?
I believe so. I mean, they have stuff, but I'm telling you right now, it's like for their ships and things, the ships are mostly 10. 11 is like highly technological, and 12 is like cutting edge military. So that's the way that it generally works. I'm just saying from my perspective of what I like from games.
I'm gonna have to pick that up just because we keep having these conversations.
And it blurs too, because I've never wanted. I've looked at tech levels in books and said, no, I don't want that technology in my game.
Sure, I totally get that.
And when you're talking about GURPS, and I think Space is one of the few that I got, they had exactly the same thing with tech levels when they did it for GURPS Space. And that's the real question of how far do we want to take it, is when you get to Numenera, for example. Numenera is all over the place, which would be, what 28 millimeter Rick is talking about. At the point that magic is synonymous with, there is no difference between them. It is literally,
right.
That. But right. And if I'm going to play, and to be fair on this, you know what you're getting into at the very beginning. I don't want a bait and switch kind of thing. Hey guys, what we're going to play. A hardcore science fiction Expanse style. Oh, cool. Oh, and now we're going to start putting in
Cthulhu.
Not even just Cthulhu.
There will be Cthulhu. There will be Cthulhu. I'll wag my finger.
I get it.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing with the players is, it's just like if I tell you we're going to play 40K, and then I tell you, oh, by the way, we have no chaos or whatever. I'm like, you're stripping the whole basis of the setting. Now, the reason for Traveler's a universal system, really, when you look at it. And it has the Imperium if you want to use it. But that's why you have 2300 Traveler and some of these other versions, which that's what makes it very flexible. And that's why I think that it has a lot to offer from that aspect. And I think that's what we're talking about is how high, what kind of science fiction game do you want? I think what is it, Alternity from White Wolf. When we talk about
even the Alternity version of Gamma World was crazy high tech, even but it was a post-apocalyptic situation. I couldn't get into that. I'm just like, nanites are everything. No. I'm not doing that. So I totally get it. But I mean, if you think about, like, for example, Star Wars, their tech was it beyond 10 or 12?
No,
I would
most of it was around 10, really.
I would put it around 13 to 14, with the average tech probably being around 12. I mean, looking
really, because I don't remember any real force fields. The robots were kind of clunky.
Star Wars had force fields for all their stuff. They even talk about it with their X-wings.
No, I would even put like Star Trek Next Generation really more around 11, but that just depends on how you're interpreting the system.
No, I'm looking at that's probably a 14. Again, a lot of the stuff I looking at the stuff for 2300 mostly, it 12 is really there, but I mean Star Trek is probably 12 to 14. That's what a lot of it comes. But I didn't, but I'm not a Star Trek fan either, and that was one of the things that kind of bugged me about Star Trek when they started doing some of the other stuff in there. So those are the things that I get into. It is what kind of world do I want? Well, I want a world that's somewhat recognizable where people still have to struggle. That's part of the problem I have when you get really high techs is, I'll just
Struggles become
2300.
philosophy and not
well, if you can just do your meta
existential.
generation, then why would there be any trade? That makes no sense. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that breaks down at really high level tech levels of why would you ever do this? If I can just meta create something in the chamber, why would I ever use it? Why would I ever bring the shuttle if I can pretty much transport everything across the giant transporter? Those are things that I look at, and that's one of the reasons I like lower tech is because we're familiar with it without it changing our entire world, like that.
2300's a good system, and it's a lot like Hammer Slammers. It's really a lot like that. If you've ever read the stories,
Mm-mm.
you read the stories, Obano?
No. Most stuff that I like reading really Heinlein more than anything else, and so I did some of that, and then I really just like reading a lot of the technical stuff and seeing where the world is going from that aspect, and that's why I like having closer tech because once you get to a certain level of tech, you're never going to imagine where it's actually going to be. That's what I'm trying to keep it as. So that's why I like having lower tech because it makes it easier for me to understand where our world could go rather than just someone saying, hey, you know what, this happens. Okay, well, now you have to do all the cascading effects from there as well.
Absolutely. Hey, Shadow, if I ever arrive somewhere naked, I want to be a Terminator 1, October 1. That's what I want to be.
Yeah, I'll try to have you a bathrobe or something handy because, I'm just saying
well,
that.
you can just go up to punk rockers and threaten them. They'll give you a vote.
Only Terminator I'm interested in is
do you
Summer
really want to
Glau.
wear the clothes?
Exactly.
Do you really want to wear the clothes that were on someone with pink hair? Just saying.
Well, I guess
Hey,
he wasn't worried about catching crabs really, or anything bad.
Hey, wait a minute. That was the cyberpunk era when it was kind of cool with the big shoulder pads. So I will say this much: why in the world they gave women shoulder pads eluded me at the time when I was a kid. Like, why are they making every girl have shoulder pads? They should look.
I think it was a feminist
Beauty style.
thing to do with making yourself look more masculine.
You know what? Give me a sundress any day. Thank God for women. I
Absolutely.
love
Woman,
Yep.
we don't want to see you in a sundress. What you do
No.
is try to keep your
Not-
home.
not me. Women in sundresses.
I'm just messing with you, my friend. You know that. It's it was. We don't use phrasing here. We should, but it just sounded like something I could throw in there.
Hey.
So guys, we're a couple minutes over. Go ahead, Omen, and then I'm going to say goodnight.
No. I was just going to say, hey, I've been complimenting my legs a couple of times, despite them being hairy. Anyway, go.
Now, most of us are going to jump on over to Nathan's channel and hang out. We beat this dead horse and sufficiently. I really got it to where I wanted to leave off because last week I was just like, all we did was talk about the negative and no way to implement it. For those of you out there in TV land, if you want to run some psionic stuff, hopefully we helped you guys out. There's a lot of great systems out there that do it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Bo has for us because he knows I have 50 points left on my character to spend. And just saying, man, if I live, I might be dipping my toe into that little psionic pool.
I'll have to send you the book. Hey, Omen, before we duck off, I found a tech level conversion from Traveler to GURP, so we're not speaking at cross purposes.
Sure.
My game for my tech level is a GURPS tech level 10, which is equivalent to a Traveler tech level 12.
Cool.
Okay. That sounds
Find it on page 107 of GURPS Traveler.
Cool.
Okay. No, I mean that sounds about right. I again, that's about the level I want. Bo, where you have it, it's about the level I want my science fiction. To be fair, if it goes a lot higher, I'm like, nah, I'm probably gonna get out of there.
No, I looked at things like nanotechnology for medicine, and so I thought I want to make the game a little more dangerous to the characters.
You know what? I want you guys to know that for the most part, I'm pretty on board The only thing I like though is the open end possibility. Okay. One thing that you guys will find when gaming with me is I have this absolute love for the ancients. Okay. A lot of
Right.
the things I've done hinge on the ancients being, especially from my ancient aliens addiction, to the possibility of there being a precursor race.
The only legitimate part of that
or-
show is that guy's haircut.
Yeah.
No, I'm
You know
going to say
what?
this much, which I find funny is go look at Christopher Dunn and all the stuff he's done. Here's the
I'm
thing
right there with you, man. I've been
I,
watching his stuff for a decade or more.
I'm gonna say this much is even if 2 or 3% of it could be true, that's still worth exploring. That's what I think sometimes people forget about is, well, we're just going to ignore it. One of the things I have to say this much, and this is what I hate, is whenever the science by consensus never moves forward. It's always that revolutionary who goes against the grain that actually pushes science forward. And that's one of the things that that people forget about. Anyway, that's my little spiel for it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mostly
I'm gonna
agree
go
with
eat
you.
supper then, because I made supper for the kids and then I ducked into the show because I wasn't gonna miss this for a lot of money. Your guest, Laura, her name was.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we need to get a show with you and her and Kevin because you're all about from the same generation of gaming, and I'm just gonna pop a crap ton of popcorn and listen to stuff from the dawn of role playing and just enjoy the heck out of it.
So
Thanks, man.
this is Victor Schauberger's The Water Wizard, which has some. I need to get into that, but I've heard nothing but good things about his stuff, and you just love on how much the U.S. government, when the person dies or takes their stuff and doesn't put it out. Anyway, it's very interesting from stuff like that. So, talking about weird
Grim
science.
left us,
There we go.
man. Grim tried to beat me to Nathan's show, I bet you.
All right.
No worries,
Well, I'll
Grim.
catch you.
Grim.
Party
We're all
on,
saying
guys.
good night. You guys have a wonderful week. Thank you guys so much for showing up. This was one for the record books. I really had a lot of fun. Hope you guys did too. Have a great weekend, what's left of it. And, we'll meet up again, before you know it. Like our friend Fritz says, I'm going to steal it from him tonight because I'm feeling it. It's only going to get better.
Well, just
Good night,
remember,
everybody.
President's Day's on Monday, so a lot of people have Monday off.
Ah, crap. You mean I got another day with my boy off?
Well.
I think he
You're in
actually has
California. They
school.
don't celebrate anything about the country, so they probably have to go to school.
He had last Monday off, I think, instead, which is weird. But
Okay.
no, I
Yeah,
always
we
have
had that up here last Monday off. Yeah. Good night, guys.
Take care, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Yep. Have a good night there, Shadow.
You too, man. I'll see you real soon.